Let's have a look at Micron stock. Has it found a top or can it go even higher? I'm going to probably make myself look a little bit stupid by giving some arguments that could suggest we've already topped out on Micron after this massive parabolic run-up that the stock has had. But the first thing to note is I have drawn some lines here of potential resistance that we could see, some higher targets on the stock if it were to run up further. You've got around $475 as a potential target and as high as $550 as well. Typically when a stock is moving in parabolic fashion, just breaking through parallel channel after parallel channel, and there's nothing really holding it back, it can be very difficult to time the exact peak. So don't take these lines as anything other than my speculation on where price would likely face resistance if this parabolic move were to continue. With that being said, there's a few very important lines to look at on Micron. The main trend line I've been looking at is this one here, and I'll put it in white just so it's easy to see. And essentially, this was acting as resistance for much of the run-up on Micron, eventually managed to break out, came back down, and using it as resistance and support, fighting around this level currently. I did record this video a few days before it's posted, so obviously price might have moved either up or down since then. I'll be very interested to see whether it breaks down from this trend line, or is it able to use it as support and go even higher, perhaps up to the $550 mark. But there's a couple of charts that I think are even more important than the normal Micron chart when we're talking about the potential for it to have topped out. So let's go have a look at those. So the first chart that I find to be quite fascinating is the Micron over M2 money supply chart, and that's what we're looking at here. Now, it seems to have put in a very precise double top, and I'm not really the kind of guy that believes in coincidences like this occurring, so maybe you are. But to me, this looks pretty decisive, and you've rejected from here. In my estimation means you're probably going to be heading lower on this ratio, which means either Micron stock is going to have to come down, or there's going to have to be more money circulating around while Micron stock doesn't go up as much in relationship to that money that is sort of floating around the economy. So that's a very interesting chart. Might indicate that Micron not necessarily going to outperform further as it has been doing. The previous time there was a peak, by the way, was during the 2001 dot-com crash, the bubble that was experienced in the tech market. So kind of interesting that the only other time Micron has got to these levels was during that massive bubble. Is it a sign of things to come? Potentially, you can be the judge of that. The next chart I have is, again, quite a stunning chart, really. This is Micron over Occidental Petroleum, Oxy, a relatively small oil company. Now, of course, this kind of, again, a bit of a double top seen here might just be a coincidence. Again, it's not the most powerful data point, but if you have a couple of these lining up, it starts to look like maybe not so much of a coincidence, and perhaps Micron could have already put in a peak. We may see this ratio continue to go down, which again might not mean that Micron itself has to go down. It might just mean that the oil stocks, for example, which I've talked about in other videos, might just be outperforming Micron going forward. So not necessarily evidence of a decisive top. And just a counterpoint to the last chart, of course, if we look at energy overall, Micron over the energy ETF, then it's a bit of a different picture. You haven't really put in this sort of double top, and you've gone quite a bit higher. So can you say for sure that this ratio will come back down? It's not a guarantee, is it? My money would be on yes at some point, but again, this is a bit of a counterpoint to the previous chart. If you want to remain more bullish on Micron, could still have room to go, although of course this does look like a very parabolic move, and again, the previous peak over here was in the dot-com bubble. So in my mind, it does look a little bit frothy, and this ratio, if it were to come back down, could again mean that Micron may have already put in most of its parabolic move. And again, another counterpoint, we've got Micron over the QQQs. Clearly there's some resistance at this level, and the ratio has sort of been fighting at these levels. Will it continue to go higher? Of course it could. And during the dot-com bubble, Micron did even outperform the QQQ even more than it has been doing in recent times. So there is potential, I suppose, for the bubble to be inflated even further and for the stock to continue to run, but it remains to be seen. Will this be a pullback? Perhaps. Maybe just a pullback before eventually going higher. That's also another possibility. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Maybe we have put in a bit of a local top. We'll have to come back down, find new buyers before going higher on Micron, but we'll see. By the time you see this video, Micron will have moved around, and it may have even put in new highs, so I might come to look like a bit of a fool, but there's some interesting charts for you. I hope that helps. At some point, I think Micron will come back down to earth when you have a parabolic move such as this. Usually, it tends not to go on forever. When will that top come? Very hard to say. And of course, the bulls will say that they're sold out in terms of the memory that they're selling, which is a very good problem for a company to have, to be selling so much stock and making so much money that you cannot produce enough of it. So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. There's multiple perspectives, and we may even see Micron continue to go up, but just some interesting data points for you to think about. I'm certainly not trying to time a top on this particular stock, but nor am I participating in the upside. So with that being said, I hope this video is interesting or helpful for you guys. Subscribe as always for more videos, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.